Hello, welcome to this very special episode of the Female Voice Zoomcast. Let's go ahead and start introducing ourselves. My name is Shanice.
I'm NECA.
And I'm Takara.
The reason why I said this episode is very special because we have some very special ladies joining us. They are a part of a group in Frederick, Maryland called Black Mamas Building Bridges. And we're going to talk about the topic of the health disparity when it comes to Black women giving birth, how we are more likely to die during the birthing process than any other group. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves as well.
Hello, my name is Akia Phillips, Frederick native, and also Frederick community advocate.
Mia Condre. I'm a member of Black Mamas Building Bridges and also a Frederick community member.
My name is Tanya Amadon. I'm also part of Black Mamas Building Bridges, and I am an advocate of Frederick County.
My name is Yewande Oladende, and I'm also a Frederick County resident, and I am a member of the Black Mamas Building Bridges.
Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us because this is a topic that affects women in Frederick County and all over the United States. It's a really big health disparity, just like we have many health disparities between Black people and other groups. So I'm going to start off with the alarming statistic that I researched. So I'm going to pull up that statistics, and then we're going to get started with the first question. And you guys, we can go in any order as we answer the questions, okay? So here's my statistic. Give me 1 second to pull it up. So Black women, and it's also, this statistic also involves Native American Indian women, have higher rates of pregnancy-related death compared to white women. Pregnancy-related mortality rates among Black women are over 3 times higher respectively compared to white women. Black women is 41.4% likely to die versus 26.2% for Native American versus 13.7% for white women. This is over like 100,000 over this, and every 100,000. So we are 41.14% more likely to die. So this being the case, we know this is an issue. Why do you suppose this is an issue? Why are Black women more likely to die during pregnancy compared to white women? And we can go in any order, whoever wants to take that.
I can start. I think, racism, structural racism, which can prevent people from getting quality health care. It can prevent us from accessing quality health care. There's bias that is involved when we are trying to get health care. Just a lot of foolishness basically going on because of racism. And it's unfortunate, it's difficult to tackle because a lot of the biased and racist people don't believe they have an issue. And it's difficult to kind of track and follow, unfortunately, but the statistics don't lie.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to add to what NECA just said, because racism is really, and I'll say the structural racism and discrimination is really at the root of why we see the statistics we see nationwide, really, because this is a problem all over the country. And one of the things that we see is that, many times, like, Black women are not listened to. So we're complaining, but our voices are discounted, our experiences are discounted by the healthcare system, those who are supposed to be caring for us when we're pregnant. And like, anyone who has had a child before being pregnant knows that, pregnancy is really a stress test on your body. Like, so many things are going on at the same time. And that's a period when women in general need to be taken care of very delicately because of what's happening to their bodies, what's happening to their systems at that time.
And I'll go next. And I also think that social economical status.
Mm-hmm.
We know that a lot of individuals who cannot afford private insurance have to get state insurance, and so that does take a big part in which doctors you can access, and things like that.
All right, anyone else
I'll
want to?
piggyback on all of those things and say the treatment, not being able to advocate for yourself, some of the biasness that happened, but also this statement where Black women can endure a higher pain tolerance as well. And so if we advocate for ourselves and say we're in pain or something's going on and we're not listened to, or we're looked at, and it could be assumed that, oh, they're looking for a drug or some type of treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not getting quality care. If you're in pain, your body, that's a sign that your body is saying something. But if the physicians or those in the healthcare system aren't listening to that, it goes untreated and can lead to maternal death or the death of the child. So I feel like that increases that statistic as well.
And I would definitely agree with you, Akia, because I know during slavery, that's why they felt like they can beat us more because we don't have the same pain tolerance. So those, like you said, it's just like you guys said, it's systematic. It goes down through history, and this was actually in textbooks. So when during a long time ago, when the people were studying the medical profession, it was noted that Black people have a higher pain tolerance. You can even see that in the way that we're treated during police stops, or thinking that we're okay and we can handle it when we're just as fragile as everybody else. We're human beings. And I think that because this is embedded in the healthcare field, that we can have this high pain tolerance when we aren't taken as seriously when we say we are in pain. So
I mean, for what you say, it goes back years when we think of the cells that were used for Henrietta. And they
mhm.
did those examples, which we've benefited from for hysterectomies and other things. But they did that without anesthesia on her because they felt like our pain tolerance is higher. So, yeah.
Yeah. So just to add to that a bit, and even the father of modern gynecology, right, Mario Sims, Dr. Sims, there's a lot of controversy around him right now, or I guess maybe not right now, but because many of the people that he experimented on, like Akia said, just to perfect the procedures that we all benefit from today, they were as a result of him experimenting on Black slaves without any form of anesthesia, because back to the same notion that we have a higher threshold for pain, which is not true. And it's very unfortunate that some of those assumptions is still perpetuated right now in the healthcare system. I'm going to give one very quick example just to show you how even though this was many years ago, this is still happening right now. Some people still hold some of those beliefs that are wrong. So about sometime last year, around August, I attended a symposium in Frederick. And I just introduced myself to a woman. I had no idea who she was, but I just saw her and I was sitting on the same table and I introduced myself to her. And when I was talking to her, I started talking about Black Mamas Building Bridges and, who we are, what we stand for here in Frederick. And then she told me she used to be a labor and delivery nurse at our local hospital, and that she worked at the hospital for over 20 years, and she recently retired. And so we started talking, and I was talking about, the Black maternal health disparities and why our group was formed. And one of the things she said to me was that, well, Black women are bound to experience negative outcomes during the birthing process and the postpartum period. And I asked her why. She said, because, we have so many pre-existing conditions going into pregnancy, high blood pressure, diabetes, and all these other things. She just kept on, listing everything and said, there's something in the genes of some Black women that predisposes them to having chronic health conditions. And I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell, and I'm the kind of person that when something shocks me, like I wear my emotions on my sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
So she could tell that I was upset. And when I calmed down a bit, I started telling her some things, and I said, you know what? There's really nothing. Let me confess, I did not tell her immediately because I was still shocked, and it would have come off the wrong way. But later on, when I gathered myself, it just shocked me that somebody who worked in labor and delivery for so many years in our local hospital had this belief that Black women are predisposed to having chronic health conditions. Now, imagine what happens when she goes in with that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have told her so many different things, right? We know stress. Stress is a big factor in all of this. The stress that racism puts on a Black woman's body, it increases. We know stress is not good. It increases the allostatic load, all of those things, and all the cumulative burden that adds on a person. Now, couple that with pregnancy, it just makes things worse. So I'm saying all of this to say that there's nothing in our genes as Black women that predisposes us to these things. It's really the result of the structural racism and discrimination and the experiences that we have that really causes the stress that we encounter. And so as a healthcare professional, it's always a good thing. And ever since then, I've been trying to speak up as much that, it's not just about the trainings. The trainings are good, the implicit bias trainings, but you really cannot train yourself out of racist beliefs if you hold on to those beliefs. I think those trainings are good in recognizing your biases and working towards addressing those biases so that they don't result in negative health outcomes for your patients.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm glad that's a very good point that you brought up. And I think the term is weathering, and how those racism stressors can prematurely age us and cause other health problems. Because, at the end of the day, the nurse's observation is not incorrect that we do have more hypertension and higher rates of diabetes and things of that nature, but it's not because our genes are defective. This is created by the social circumstances that we are put in. So that's a good point to mention. And the other thing I was going to also mention is homicide is now the leading cause of death in pregnant women, which is not very often talked about, but it needs to be. So, that's another big issue that I find that we don't really discuss as much, but it needs to be a high priority item because it's a huge issue. I mean, it's just really shocking for that to be the number one cause in the US of the death of pregnant women. And I mean, I don't want to get too far into men and their mental health problems, but it's usually the intimate partner, the father of the child, who is killing the pregnant woman for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up too, Neka. I'm just want to make sure everybody had a turn to talk. Did Nia or Takara want to comment on this?
I was just going to say that we do need advocates in the hospital system and in administration, which I think is part of the issue. Just having someone. I was fortunate enough. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I was able to have the doctor that I use for my OBGYN for my children was the same doctor that delivered me from my mother. So I was, blessed enough to be able to have him. And it was a African-American practice. So there were 3 doctors and they were all African-American men. But having them and being able to talk to them, frankly and honestly and openly was a blessing really to have, because I mean, we could joke and laugh and, and then, in all seriousness, Nia, you need to do X, Y, and Z. I heard him and he heard me. So I mean, we just don't have those doctors, we don't have those nurses that we can go to, and so we really need to get some of these kids into the medical field and wanting to do that and just kind of foster that, I think, because it was good for me to have, and I would want that for all three of my daughters. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, representation is very important in all and being everywhere, especially as advocates for ourselves, because no one else would do it if we're not there. They're not thinking about us like that. Takara, did you want to add?
Sure. I'll just add one thing that we didn't talk about with a big thing that's that can lead to more, the reason why more Black women die giving birth is also omission bias, which is going to be more where Black people are going to be more prone to this, where the different options, as far as treatment, your different options giving birth, like as far as like statistics and giving you the right information when we talk about giving informed consent. A lot of things are often left out for all of the reasons that we've already been discussing today, because of systemic racism and medical bias. And we have these preconceived notions, these fixed false beliefs that there's this, oh, well, the Black people are dying because of their own issues, their own problems. But like NECA was saying, these are issues that we have been placed in these positions, and stuck in poverty, and we have been given these circumstances where we've been given a short hand, right? The short short stick, right? Like we've been given an unfair hand to play with. So we're going to be predisposed for other reasons that we really couldn't control. So those things, and then that leaves us to be invalidated. That doesn't make us less of a person. And people don't realize that these things are the undercurrents and what's been happening. We've been socialized to this for years. So here it is, your Wednesday is at a conference, and this woman is basically blaming all of these problems on us. And it's like, no, like the onus is not always on us as the minorities, just like they blame us for everything else. Oh, the candidate we wanted didn't win, so Black women didn't vote. Oh, somehow it's our fault. Like forever. I mean, it's ridiculous that so, and just because we have diabetes, or just because we have hypertension, just because we have all of these other maybe like medical issues, that doesn't invalidate or minimize or make our lives less valuable. Those issues are already there, and those white doctors need to unpack that. The white medical system needs to unpack that and be honest about that. They have issued apologies, as in we've heard apologies about how we've been left out of medical research, how this has been going on for years, this medical bias. But like you say, what are they going to do about it? Because you're absolutely right. Like we can't, it's not on us to fix it. They need to do some fixing of it. I mean, I think we need to maybe help them to kind of, maybe understand and bring light to the problem, but they need to do some unlearning to fix this problem out in there.
Right. Thank you for that comment. You're definitely right on with that. So this leads us into our second question, because you said they need to fix it, but let's go back to us. Like those people that aren't pregnant, those people that are expecting pregnancies, those people that are and within the community. How can we as a community advocate for better healthcare and practice? And I know Yuandi and the Better Black Mamas Building Bridges, they are doing something locally to help combat this issue. But and so what can we do as a community to advocate for these women that are giving birth and dying?
So I'm just going to start off by saying that this quote, I think it came from, well, I heard it first from Representative Lauren Underwood. And I don't know if she was the first person that said it, but I heard it from her. And she said, those who are closest to the problem are the ones that should be closest to the solution. And that was really the approach that we took to this, because after we had the focus group that led to Black Mamas Building Bridges being formed, one of the things that we did was that, okay, it's great. I know it just did not happen to me alone. I didn't have this experience by myself. Someone else, another Black woman also had that experience. And we came together because we wanted to make a difference. And so I'm saying all of this to say that as a community, I think one of the things that we need to start working on, or we are working on, I should say, is that we need to hold let me backtrack by saying we really need to hold space for Black women to tell their stories, because that's the only way we can propel change. That's one of the first things. And if we're not being listened to by the healthcare system, we can hold space for our sisters to tell their own story. That's a key part of it. Another thing that I want to say, and I'll be quiet, is I think we also need to go to the indigenous ways of doing things. And by that, what I mean is there was pregnancy, having children is a natural process that a woman's body experiences. And everything has been so medicalized that we need to evolve from just that biomedical way of doing things solely. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't go to the hospitals to have our children, but there should be other options available. There should be doulas, there should be birth centers. It's not just the only option of I need to have my baby in the hospital. Going back to our ancestral roots, how did our mothers do it back in the day? What are some of the lessons we can learn from the way our mothers and ancestors did it back in the day that we can incorporate into or integrate into modern day practices? So I think those are the ones I'll highlight.
And Yewande, to piggyback off of that, what came to mind for me was fear. Like as a young Black mom, like having a doula and not being in a hospital and things like that would have terrified me, when I had my first daughter. And so how do we get these young Black women to actually kind of adopt that same mentality, because it's rare. It's rare. I think it's good. I think it would be good for us to have that, but how do we get buy-in for that, I guess is.
So I think it really is a systematic problem, and it really has to be integrated into the way healthcare is practiced. Healthcare is so, and when you think about it, it boils down to reimbursement, right? What will my insurance cover? If I have a doula, will my insurance cover it? If I decide to have a child in a birth center, will my insurance cover it? So when you think about the obstacles, apart from the fear, when you think about all the other obstacles, you're like, okay, maybe I should just go to the hospital and just take care of this since insurance will cover it. So that's why I said it's a systemic problem that if, say, for example, insurance companies start covering for doulas, they start covering for, having a baby in the birth center, nobody will think it's odd to say you want to have a home birth. Nobody will think it's odd to say you want to have a doula as part of your care team. It just it becomes the norm, normalized into the process. So, and then of course, sometimes when you talk about indigenous ways of doing things, people are very quick to say, oh, that's very primitive. That's something that, they put negative labels on them. And the other day I was watching a show or something, and they said even the way the body, when a woman wants to have a baby, she's not supposed to be laying on her back to have a baby because she needs the gravity to bring the baby down. And when you think about the hospital, when you're having a child, you're laying on your back. Whereas I'm from Nigeria, born and raised in Nigeria, and I moved here for college. So back in Nigeria, even in the hospitals, when I was in Nigeria, they're even embracing the Western ways of doing things, of laying on your back to have babies. Whereas I remember my grandmother and some of her friends, when they helped other women to have babies, it was not you laying on your back, but you, assuming the position to allow for gravity to bring that child down. And when you think about midwives, for example, midwives are also helping, as in that process of not just and I know midwives are trained as well, but they're also helping in that process of how can we do it in such a way that the woman's body is built for this, and we follow just the natural process of how a body should birth a child.
This is some good stuff. As I ponder on the questions, the things that I think about, and based upon my role in the community, is that we have to educate ourselves in our community. We have to reach the parts of the community that no one wants to go to. And we have to be able to ask those tough questions. We have to be able to challenge them and be able to say, hey, can this be possible, that be possible, when we're trying to advocate for this.
All right, anybody else?
I agree. When we're thinking about what we can do to change it, educating people, we know our bodies, we know our experiences. And so our shared experiences need to have a platform. We need to allow our voices to hit the right level of people. It needs to hit the healthcare system. It needs to hit those in positions of power that can enact change as well, whether it's a local official on up to our elected officials. I think shared experiences are important. While thinking about some of the questions, I feel like I forgot my own lived experience. And sometimes we can separate ourselves from our own lived experience because of the trauma. So without going into detail for mine just yet, I feel like the fear that happens and the trauma and the lasting effects also create more issues that lead to this disparity and this statistic going higher. When I experienced my issue after childbirth, I didn't go to a GYN for 3 years. And so we're not talking about the aftermath of the lived experience as well, where I could have lived in that one experience. I didn't have another child after this one. But I wonder sometimes the impact of that experience if I had another child. Would I have been more silent because they just brushed me off? They didn't pay me mine before. And that could have led to me not advocating for myself, which could have led to death, those types of things. There's people that have lived experiences that we don't look at that as mental health, and we don't get all the treatment that we need to talk through that. It could be unconscious, it could be conscious, but those do have impacts on how it can change our thoughts and our behavior. And if it changes our behavior, we may not preemptively advocate for ourselves because of that last experience. So I would say having groups like this and opportunities like this, where it's a safe space for people to share those experiences, I feel like that's a beautiful thing to at least get it out. And then you never know how that can connect and encourage and empower somebody else. So I feel like each one reach one. These sessions and what we do with Black Mamas, I feel like are just as important. And then linking up with the right level of people in the community to enact change.
That's a good.
Right. I mean, I totally agree with that. The trouble also too is that it's such a big problem, right? Like, and it's a like insidious, covert problem, right? Like, think about, so it's one of those things where it's hard for you to just say, this is what the problem, you can't just like put your finger on it and say what the problem is. So we are here, like you say, talking about it. We can educate other people because that's important, because often for those people in the general public, they may say something didn't feel right, something wasn't right, but they don't know what that something is, right? You can't identify it, put a name to it, say what it is, so then there's not just one answer. Once you realize what the problems are, which we've just been talking about, is the systemic racism and the bias and the omission, and I mean all of these, socioeconomic status. Like, it's hard to, like, it's a multifaceted problem that requires a lot of hard work. It's going to take time, because again, this is something that we need to fix from 400 years plus of this behavior, these fixed false beliefs that we're dealing with.
I was also going to mention that when we're talking about telling our stories, just thinking about how that can also combat fear. I think a lot of women can be scared of birthing centers, using midwives, using doulas, because there's not as many stories out there as our typical go to the hospital, labor and delivery, boom, here's your baby. And so if you don't know anybody who's done it, you've never heard of anybody who's had a successful delivery in that manner, you may just shy away from it and be worried. So I think part of that is telling the stories of women who have done these things successfully. So you have a frame of reference for that as well. And then there are some, I don't know, there at some time, I know I'm not up to my latest stuff with Maryland, but at some point there was legislation saying that home birth was illegal in this state. That may, I don't know if that's still the case, but if there are laws like that on the books, that is also an obstacle that needs to be tackled. And then lastly, I was just going to mention doulas. Again, just really important to have somebody who is there, who can advocate for your wants and needs, who is not like in pain, who is not anxious, who is calm, who has been through this multiple times, who can recognize when there is that omission bias that Takar was talking about, or other, things that are not quite right that a woman who is laboring may not pick up on or have the experience with to recognize.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Neka, you just reminded me of something like you say about the shared experience thing. It's important, like how we talked about representation, it's important for people to not feel alone. So I think, like you say, when people share stories and talk about their experience, like you say, it opens the door for for people to say, oh, like, okay, so I'm not the only person who experienced it. It's not just all in my head, right? That this happened. And that's another way, like you say, that traumatic experience to keep people oppressed and to keep people in a position of in a downtrodden space. Because if you feel like, okay, I'm not that important, I mean, that might not even be your train of thought, but people don't realize that that is what you display with your behavior when you are put up against a system that's just constantly telling you it's all in your head, or we don't know, we don't treat people like that, we treat everybody the same. But like you said, we know, because here we are talking about this today, that that's not what everybody's experience is. They don't treat us the same. So those, opening the door, like how you said, we're starting here today with today's Zoom cast. We're talking about a subject that somebody may, this could resonate with somebody who may say, okay, and then also there's a power in numbers, right? We're taught that in childhood, but somehow that gets lost for Black people as we get older. We really, like you say, we need to be like kind of, on the same ship together to move forward to improve the situation.
I definitely agree with all of you. And that's why I love what the Black Mamas Building Bridges is doing here in Frederick, getting those stories out so people realize I'm not the only one that had this experience during childbirth. It's not just me. And then from that point on, and hopefully more people will advocate and then try to find solutions to this problem that we have. Because if it's like you said, number speaks volume to Cara, and if they see, well, this is going on in this county, then we definitely need to come up with a solution, and it will open eyes to many issues, and we can probably come up with a solution just through those stories. So what you guys are doing are very powerful, and I definitely am admiring you guys for that, for going out, stepping out, and being advocates for women that need that voice to be heard. And I thank you guys for your service, and I can hope you continue to be a blessing to this community, because we definitely need to hear you all. Anyone else want to comment? Did everybody have a chance? Okay, all right. So
I was going to say,
Oh, go ahead.
Shanice, that when I first relocated here from Pennsylvania, and I told, I was in Montgomery County, I was advised in advance by some, people that I had met or that I befriended to not go to, I mean, just for general health care, primary care, do not go to any hospital in Frederick County. And I had no idea why they said that. I just, I was moving here, and for various reasons, but I was almost warned, do not go to a hospital in Frederick County. And I was just like, what? Like I had never, and it was definitely more than one person that shared that with me. And it really did cause me to keep doctors in a different county, because I wasn't really clear on why they were saying that. And then we ended up being on the focus group, and different things started to open up. And as I started living in Frederick County, I understood kind of why they were saying that. And so, but yeah, I just so I could imagine, because this is such a transient area, how many women are told, with regards to Frederick, Maryland, how the healthcare system is here in this county, because I barely knew people and they were like, don't do it. So
Can I add one more thing quickly? I think, Nia, what you just said sparked a light bulb in my brain. So very quickly, I remember, and I think this is one thing that we always say, regarding the education piece, I agree completely. And I think it's something that needs to be done even before a woman gets pregnant or is about to have a baby. Because I think that's when you have all the prenatal care, you have all the, different programs at that point. But when I think about that, I think it's probably too late at that point, because the woman, the young lady or woman already has had an experience with the healthcare system that may have been negative, and that would inform how she interacts with the healthcare system at the time she gets pregnant. And one last thing I want to say on that is, we talked about representation and how representation matters in any area, in any field you're in, and most especially in the healthcare system. Mostly because what we find in Frederick, for example, is that the demographics of Frederick County is changing to become more diverse, and the healthcare system, we have just one hospital. It's not as diverse, as the changing demographic here in Frederick. And there's that racial discordance of the healthcare providers who are serving, Black women. Now, I always put a caveat to say that I'm not saying that all healthcare providers of color should be the only ones treating health or caring for women of color. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need healthcare providers who are culturally congruent to know that, okay, to understand the culture and the cultural differences of the group that they're caring for. We need healthcare providers that are also culturally humble enough to say, I don't know what I don't know. So please explain to me. I know you have Nigerian ancestry, for example, and try to understand what's going on. Now, I know that healthcare providers have a limited time that is spent with their patients, but even those little things will show that you care, you are there to listen, and then it helps in building trust.
I feel like just one thing piggybacking off of that, when we're talking now local for Frederick, and this can go large, but I feel like policy doesn't hold any type of accountability or procedure. Like, that's where bias can come in, and now it's based upon the person that you're dealing with. And so if I'm a mom in labor and I'm saying I'm pushing that nurse button, sometimes we know that nurse button could be pushed for 30 minutes. You could sometimes fall back asleep and nobody comes in. I feel like procedurally that there's nothing in the system to hold accountability as well. I've heard many stories where a Black mother has died and someone or that mother was pushing the button or saying that they were in some type of need of care and they got left. They got left alone. Busy gets blamed sometimes, being overwhelmed and those things, which I don't feel like will ever be a acceptable excuse for why any mother should die in childbirth. So I feel like we need to look at the procedures that govern what the healthcare officials do, what nurses do, how they need to respond, so that it can do away with some bias. Because now I have to depend on how you interpret or how you feel. And if you have a bias against someone or feel like my pain tolerance is higher, it it can be felt in my level of care, but it may not always be proven. And I think that's also an issue, that it can be felt. And when we share our shared feelings of the experience, we tend to not get the benefit of the doubt. It can be talked in another way, which will still leave us feeling unheard and unseen. And so I think we need to look at procedures and policy for the healthcare system, how they're governed.
And I just want to say one more thing too. And I think also too, when we look at it on the college level, I think that the books need to be updated. I think that when the individuals who are teaching these, you know, the healthcare officials that are going to be working at these hospitals and working at the OBGYNs to teach them the sensitivity on how to deal with our population, because I think a lot of times that's neglected. And so I think that, you know, that needs to be updated and it really needs to be looked at, because we need to educate the new individuals that are going to, you know, be our health providers. And I think that's important as well.
That's a very, very good point. So, to go to our final question, what can women who are watching, who are pregnant, do to ensure their safety? What can they do to ensure that they are getting the best healthcare practice as possible?
I think it's everything we've been saying, that we've all been saying here. Like, you really need to be your own advocate. And at the time of delivery, obviously, you may be in so much pain that you don't even know what's going on around you. Have somebody who can advocate for you. It doesn't have to be a family member. It could be a doula. We keep on talking about doulas because they could be your support system. It could be, you know, anyone. Just have somebody there who's in your corner that can advocate for you. Even though, you know, we've heard stories nationally that even after you have an advocate, you know, there, sometimes it could go south. But, you know, just having someone there is key. The second thing is also, you know, you need to do, I feel like as Black women right now, we need to do whatever it takes for them to listen to us, you know, for healthcare providers to listen to us. Don't try to be, you know, play cool or be polite, because this is really a matter of life and death. It could be a matter of life and death. So whatever you need to do, if you're going to create a sin, do it, as long as, you know, you're listened to and you are tended to.
Yeah, I would piggyback and say educate yourself, and educate others, but also research. Research the doctor that you're going to. Look at your health plan. If you need to change your health plan to get another doctor, sometimes you don't take the time to do that, but educate yourself, and research also the hospital that you're going to go to. Speak to people that will be in that birthing room with you, so that they can know if I can't make a choice, or if for whatever reason I'm incapacitated, like I want you to do X, Y, and Z, advocate for me on this behalf. So it's really going to take work. And sometimes we can't take the easy way out because it is a matter of life and death. Statistically, it's showing us. So we need to do the work to educate ourselves and also research.
And I would say this too, listen to your body. If your body is telling you something that is not correct, speak out, and don't quit speaking out until something is done. Because so many of us, you know, we might feel something, but then we don't say something. So if you feel something, say something. Be your best advocate when it comes to your body. Something is wrong, say something, and just listen to yourself, listen to your inner self.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tanya. I would say definitely trust yourself. And if you feel like the doctors or nurses, if you have any type of feeling that something isn't right with them, change them. Do not stay with someone you're not comfortable with. If there's, you know, any type of doubt, move.
I just love what you said, what everyone said. I think the one that really resonates with me is, you know, listen to your body. You know how your body feels. Like, no doctor can tell you how your body feels. And I think sometimes as Black women, we tend to like downplay our the way we feel. Like, oh, I just have a, you know, slight headache. You know, maybe I'll just take a Tylenol and just rest and I'll be fine. We take care of everybody else, and then we dismiss our own, you know, concerns and how we feel. But no, like, if something is wrong, the slightest thing, you definitely need to get it checked.
I think also that older generation that is supporting the younger generation can also be a part of that. I remember when I had my kids, if I did have a headache, I had older women like, oh, I had headaches too. You just need to lay down, or you just need to do this, lay off the salt. I was preeclamptic with one of my pregnancies. After my last pregnancy, I had a tubal ligation.
Mm.
And because they left placenta at the time that they did the tubal ligation, I was bleeding. And when I called the doctor, the person said, well, you did just have a procedure, and hung up the phone. And I remember feeling like I was going to die. And I looked at my mom and was like, this is what they said. And she was like, well, just go lay down. Like they're the specialists. They're the ones that know. And when I went to go lay down, I remember just feeling hopeless.
Mm.
And I called my husband. People know when I cry, you can't really understand me. So he just knew to come home. And when he came home, I had already passed out.
Mm.
Um, Frederick Memorial. They rushed me to Frederick Memorial and they took me straight back. That does not happen in Frederick Memorial. The nurse came back and said, you were white. I thought you were going to die. It's those types of situations that it's important for that support system and an older generation that endured this to know that things are changing. And although you experience this, it's that's not normal and you shouldn't have experienced that, and it's leading to statistics of losing more Black moms. And
Mm.
so it's a circle that we need to repair that's fractured.
Yes, I definitely agree. And to piggyback with you all say at the beginning, I think Kia brought it up about the advocacy in the hospital. That's so important. I think it saved my daughter's life. Because when I was giving birth to her, I was in labor for over 24 hours. And she was going into distress, and my mother-in-law was in there with me, and she told the nurse, she's like, you need to come back in here right now. I see something going on. I was done. I was out. So she's like, you need to come back in here right now. There's something going on. They came back in, and they're like, oh wow, the baby's heart rate is dropping. So if she wasn't in there, I probably wouldn't have my daughter. So yes, have people there that know, even because it's if you haven't had a child, and I, like I said, I was out of it. It was in labor, a long time. But I was out of it. So she was there. Having her there really saved her life, and I don't know if it saved my life as well, but I know it definitely saved her life. And so have someone in there, and she even made the nurse cry because she was like, you need to get back in there, you need to deal with her. And she's like, yeah, that nurse came out of there crying. I was like, but she did what she had to do. So have someone in there that has your back, that can support you, that knows you, and that will advocate on your behalf. So because if you have ever had a child, it is not easy, and you may not have the voice at the time to say, hey, I'm in pain, but have someone there looking at those monitors. She said she didn't go to sleep. Everybody else went to sleep, but she stayed awake the whole time, watching out for us. So have someone that can do that for you. So that would be my biggest advice as far as what you can do. And then, of course, like many people say, educate yourself. Know that um, know that it is important that you have the statistics before you go in. Know that it's important that you know what to do. Know that you have other birthing options. If you need to change doctors mid-delivery, do so. Do what you can do to ensure your safety and the safety of your child. So that would be my advice. Anyone else have any more advice, or
I
Takara?
would just add, we talk about, like educate yourself, but it's like it's a lot of information out there. Where do you begin? How do you, kind of, comb through that to decide what's valuable, what's real, what's not, like what is, credible, right? Versus what is, made up. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of, again, that medical bias is out there where we may get misinformed. My suggestion would be, when you like you say, starting with people around you, ask questions, but maybe we can think outside of the box with those questions. What scared you the most with your pregnancy, with your birthing experience? What, thinking back, right? Because hindsight is 2020. When you're in it beforehand, you don't really, like that may not be the best time to know what questions you want to ask or what you were afraid of, but you can, like, like, which I don't have children, but I'm sure for people who do have children, you look back and there's all of these other things that that you didn't realize at the time, but now you've had time to process that and really, you could pass that information on to somebody else. So, if you don't know where to start, start with the people around you and ask questions, just not generic questions of, how was your birthing experience, but what was the most fearful thing about it? What would you have done differently? What was the thing that you wanted to change the most? Were there things you didn't like? What did you like about your birthing experience? Also, if you don't feel like you have people around you and you don't think that you're going in the right direction, or you still have more questions, finding advocacy in support groups, or even considering Google them, find support groups, and, maybe finding an agency like, Black Mamas, where you can get more information that may be more in line with what you're looking for and can point you in the right direction.
So, NECA, do you have any advice?
I think everybody has pretty much covered, everything that I would say. I think I can't remember who said it, but somebody said basically making noise and not worrying about being polite can save your life. And it reminded me of a story of a friend of the family who was miscarrying, and she went to the local county emergency room where they kind of just had her, behind some curtains, not really paying her much attention. And she, was like upset and, wondering what was going on, and they hadn't been seen in a while. And they were told that, oh, that, people were busy. And eventually she started losing consciousness from so much blood loss. And she had a friend there who just started screaming. She just started screaming at the top of her lungs that she needs help. Now, of course, everybody ran in, right? And she was immediately like rushed to the OR. And she ended up being okay, but it's really important to make noise and be loud, because if they would have just been quiet, like, oh, eventually they're going to come check on us, or, it could have resulted in her death. So I think that is a really important point. And then something else I was going to mention is that most hospitals have, I think every hospital has some kind of patient advocacy line. So, if the staff is not listening to you, you should try to escalate through that line. Some people will ask sometimes to speak to the charge nurse or the attending physician, but also, like, over the whole hospital, there's people that are advocating for the patients. And so, labor is a 24-hour deal. They may not be in-house if it's overnight, but it's worth a try, especially if it's during the daytime. You may get a real-time response. At the hospital I work at, their real-time response. That call comes in and people are dispatched to that room where the patient is to hear the concern and to address it. So that's another thing that can be helpful.
All right, ladies. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say I had a similar story where I had my daughter, I was sick, and she actually came out. Back then, we crowned the kids in a different room than what we delivered. So I crowned my daughter in one room, and then after you crown her, then they take you to another room to the delivery room to deliver her. And I was 16 years old. So I had my daughter when I was 16, my oldest daughter. And I was young and I got sick. I started to throw up, and I had preeclampsia too. And my mom was there, and I had an epidural, and I said, Mom, I feel something, between my legs, and because I had thrown up, like I literally gotten sick. And after I threw up, I said, I feel something. And she lifted the bed, and she did, and she had to yell to the nurse. My daughter was out. She was out, and she was purple, according to my mother. And so they came in, and then, my doctor was great, but he wasn't there the day that I delivered my daughter, so that's another thing. Like, I didn't know those people in the hospital, and my doctor was not on call. And unfortunately, there was no one there at that time to even do the delivery. I think it was actually the nurses that helped me crown her. I don't know if it was I know it wasn't my doctor. Who I had been with for 9 months, who I loved, but he wasn't in. And then they had to catheterize me and everything but I was young. I didn't know the questions to ask. It was trauma. I've never talked about that, I don't think, ever out loud, ever until today. But like Akia was saying, it's trauma. You kind of just like bury it, down. And so in hindsight, I definitely have questions and I have experience. It's not something that I really talk about though. So, but yeah, so I do think you got to make noise. You got to scream, yell, everything, because my daughter could have died.
Yes.
We carry so much that we don't even realize that some of these events are traumatic, and we just have them buried and we don't speak about them until, I guess, things happen. And that's why we need to share our stories. We need to be that safe space, to help each other heal.
Right, and doing away with that whole idea of the strong Black woman, because a lot of this is related to that, right? Is that old, proverb and that old adage of, the strong Black woman and we can handle anything. I don't want to look weak. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to bother those people. I don't want blah, blah, blah. No, we need to you need to utilize your resources. That's how you need to look at it. Like, this is what's available to me. This is my life. I don't know what the hell's going on here. You need to tell me. And if you don't understand, if you don't want to explain it, that's fine. Go and get somebody else, like whatever it is, like you say, whatever it's going to take. And like you say, and not, us, carrying along the way white people have made us feel for years, that we supposed to just shut up and take, you can take, they fine. And, it's okay. We have really learned to take that on to, and then it's like, like we supposed to just, always constantly be in control. Sometimes we don't know what's going on. I don't know what's right. And like you say, maybe, you might be feeling like something not right, but it's okay to say, like, I don't know about this, and I don't know about your answer either. So maybe we should get somebody else to come, to come in here and talk to me about this. Cause I don't know. I mean, I'm a nurse practitioner, and, I remember getting this has nothing to do with children. Cause again, I didn't have children, but we see this in so many areas of our life. I had a dentist talking to me about the different areas of anesthesia. I'm not an anesthesiologist. So you need to explain this to me, because I don't know really what all my options are, but I'm not shy. I was like, oh no, you need to explain this to me, and I'm like, and like you say, so when you're 16 years old and you're not a medical professional, like you say, like, it's good to have, like you say, your mother was there. You said your mother, right, Nia?
It was my mom, yeah, but I was embarrassed. I was a teen. I mean, back then,
Yep.
teenage pregnancy was prevalent. My friends, my sister, in the 90s, a lot of teenage pregnancies were happening. But you don't. I don't think I knew. I thought I was fine, but I mean, really, it's embarrassing. You're ashamed.
Right. Right.
Mentally,
And then people are looking at you, and that's a part of the
right.
bias, right? Because your 16-year-old Black self wasn't supposed to be having no baby, no way, right? But that's not the point. So you need to put on your professional cap and get your Hippocratic oath out and birth this child and make this child, live a happy, healthy, viable child, because this child is just as important as anybody else, but that's the issue. Like, people, we need to get more, real about what we saying to people, and not being all PC and political correct and all of this, because you're not supposed to be doing no harm. It's not supposed, that does not only apply to white people, that applies to everybody. But that's not how things are taught, right? That's not, how they talk about it in orientation. That's not how they talking about it in school. We got to be all PC about this stuff. But yeah, like, that's really what's happening here. It's like, we are this is why we got this whole Black Lives Matter. It's a whole bunch of mess that has happened behind Black Lives Matter, but the essence of Black Lives Matter is because our lives have been less valuable over the years. They have, if valued at all, other than us being a commodity, right? So now it's like, they already looking at you sideways because, you Black and you strong, or you young, you should have had no baby this young. So there's so many reasons for them to dismiss us. But the bottom line is get it together and be a professional and do your job and make this, because this is a healthy pregnancy. You just need to do your job, because you're going to get your check either way, right? So do what you're supposed to do. Healthcare professional. Thank you.
Amen.
You just preached a whole sermon. I feel like you preached a whole sermon.
I loved it.
Yes, yes.
We went to church and we're back.
I loved
Like,
it.
child, it be like, listen, sometimes that's how you got to get it together. If this is your
Yeah,
white baby, we wouldn't even be having these problems. So, Hippocratic oath, honey, and do no harm. Thank you.
I feel like when you were talking though,
To
I was
all the
thinking
people.
about this inferiority complex, inferiority where we feel like they're the educated person, they're the ones, and we can sometimes silence ourselves to that. Or how I was taught in my family, don't ruffle no feathers. And so that means that I could ask something, but I'm gonna listen to what you say because you're the professional. And we got to get out of that mentality and do what Tanya said. You know your body, speak up for yourself. So
Right.
as Black women, make a scene when it's necessary, continue to speak up and advocate for yourself.
But
Right.
also, I think to Tokara's point is that the onus shouldn't be only on us, right? Even though we're the ones having the problem now, so we have to do something, but everything shouldn't be on us. It should also be on the healthcare professionals, because the truth of the matter is that you need to do what you're supposed to do. You need to do your due diligence by all people, whether it's Black, white, whatever the color is. You need to do what you need to do. Plus, there's already that power differential, right? You are the medical professional, I'm the lowly patient. I don't know as much as you. However, I've lived in my body for X number of years, so I know my body and I know how my body feels. So no matter what degrees you have, it cannot tell you about my body better than I can tell you about my body. And that's the place we need to get to.
well, ladies, you have done an amazing job. Beautiful discussion, and I hope we get lots and lots of views because this is important, and that we hope everybody listens and takes notes, and you're going to go to church for a little bit with Takara. And so yeah, so before we leave, what we always do, we do shout out. So if you have a shout out to an organization, to any that you would like to shout out, this is your time to do this. Does anybody have any shout outs?
Let's do a shout out to BMBB. Let's first start with Black Mamas Building Bridges. And the four of us are from Black Mamas Building Bridges. And our name, actually, Nia's daughter was the one who came up with our name. So shout out to True. She came up with the name. But also, in all seriousness, like we said, we're a bunch of we're Black women that are working very hard to change this narrative for Black women in Frederick County. And the way we like to say it is that one of our mission, part of our mission is to educate and advocate for Black women in Frederick County, especially in their quest to achieve equitable maternal health. So it's important that, some of the things, if you're a Black woman in Frederick County and you're pregnant or you recently had a baby or you're not sure what to do or how to even start this whole process, please reach out to us. Our email address is bmbbfrederick@gmail.com. So it's very easy. Just reach out to us and we will walk you through the process of how best you can advocate for yourself so that you would have a positive outcome.
And I want to give a shout out to the Black Advancement and the Female Voice for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Neka, Takara.
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to my good friend Courtney James. And she has the Instagram, which is Dr. Courtney James, DrKortney, James the regular way. So she is a Black nurse researcher who has a PhD, who is doing her studies in maternal health, maternal mortality, focused on Black women. She has a lot of information on her page about reducing maternal mortality, information about acts like the Omnibus Act, which was introduced to address the maternal health crisis in the US and is still, I think, working its way through Congress. And just keep me up to date on that kind of information.
Anyone else before we conclude?
I'll just shout out I have a mental health page on Instagram. It's the Black Psych and P, BLK Psych and P on Instagram. And I just, talk about just mental health realness. I keeps it real. I like to get the information out there. You know, and I mean, there's, you know, lots of stuff. I treat veterans for a living. So I, you know, also add in some things that I learned from my veterans, because as we talked about earlier, there's a lot that could come from, you know, previous generations, what we can learn from them too. Thank you.
So I don't have a shout out, but I want to thank you guys for allowing us to be on this platform to get this word out, because so many people need to hear what we're saying. And so this was a great opportunity. And so we want to thank you guys for this.
Thank you. And thank you guys for joining us. And of course, we discussed we can have you back if you want to do a live show, and we can open up the floor for questions and comments. So when that happens, we'll send something out to advertise for it. So if you would like to actually participate in the discussion and ask questions to the ladies that are on the show, feel free to. That will be advertised on the Black Advancements Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter. But that's it. And of course, as always, shout out to the Black Advancement, and thank you guys for watching. Like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.
Bye.